That's what happened last time. I didn't see it, so that's why they didn't get over. So I got to turn that off.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Rotary Club of Cincinnati members. Thank you for being here, guests and visitors, to one of the largest gatherings of Rotarians in the country. We are really glad that you chose your lunch hour to be with us today. I was reminiscing with our speaker today, Peter Bronson, that I call myself a newspaper man, but there are terms in this country that might be going out of business and out of style, and the term newspaper man may no longer be relevant today. I'm sure Peter will discuss with us some of those issues that the news business is facing, but let's get our meeting started off as we always do with the national anthem led by Janet Metzelaar and Bill Steele.
With gusto.
Who lost her mother-in-law, Elaine, and also please keep in your thoughts and prayers the family and Don Nyer, our past president from 1984-85, who's facing some significant health challenges. Terry?
Good afternoon, everyone. In 120 seconds, I want to give you a little story about the power of a smile. I want to use a young lady that I know. I've known this young lady since the day she was born. I kid you not, I believe she came out with a smile on her face. I watched her grow up, I watched her volunteer, I watched her go through high school, I watched her go to college, and she was just always this spotlight, this smile that made everybody feel better. I even watched her get a job at Wynwood High School. At the age of 33, she became the youngest vice principal at Wynwood High School. And everyone loved her in the community. Why? Because she always had a smile and she always was in contact with people. But at the age of 33, she received news. And she actually called me, wanting me to come to her house so I could receive the news. And when I did get to her house and she came out to the driveway with this beautiful smile on her face, she informed me that she was diagnosed with cancer. Now, she did not have a frown down whatsoever. She just looked at me and said, "Cousin Terry, it's going to be okay." And the entire time that she was going through treatment, back and forth to New York, back and forth to Chicago, still working at Wynwood High School, and she found time to get her doctor's degree. Going through all this trial and tribulation with a smile on her face. So luckily the cancer did go into remission. And so for about 1 year and 8 months, she continued life, still glowing, still smiling, and everything was great. About 4 weeks ago, I went to a St. Ed's Withrow High School football game. And I got a text from my wife, which is unusual, since she knows I'm at a football game. And the text simply said, "Terry, come straight home." Now I knew something had to be wrong, but I did. I came straight home, and I went to the back of my little patio of my house, and who was there? My wonderful cousin, with a smile on her face. And she greeted me with the biggest hug, and she held my hands, and she said, "Cousin Terry, I got something to tell you." And I said, "What?" She goes, "The cancer is gone." But yet she had a smile on her face. And as soon as she told me that, my smile disappeared. And she grabbed my face and said, bring that smile back, because I'm going to need that smile to beat cancer for the second time. Why am I telling you this? Listen, your smile is powerful, and we are always taught to smile at people that you think needs that smile. Listen, smile at everyone, because even those that have a smile, they need your smile, because they go through things too. God bless you all. Amen. Let's do the 4-way test. Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you all.
You may be seated. And let's give a couple of smiles. It always amazes me how much sitting down causes conversation. Let's give a couple of smiles to some folks here. Not sure if they are here, but Chelsea Jansen, a big shout out to her for being named to the latest Cincy Leads class. And Andrew McCall, a big promotion at First Commonwealth Bank. And then let's celebrate our birthdays today. I saw Steve Dreffel here, so happy birthday, Steve. Birthdays. And now let's meet our visitors and guests. Dan?
Thank you, President Doug. Got some great visitors today. And in the leadoff position, brought to you, her Rotarian sponsor is Melinda Kelly. We have Zawase Nayate. She is a senior capital analyst with Fifth Third Bank. With Rotarian Kelly Mahan is DJ Sessions from Sessions Lending. And with Rotarian Deborah Schultz is Clara Matanhatsi. And a special guest today, Gary Kendall's brother, Craig, straight here from Boca Raton, Florida. And believe it or not, he is not a bowler. But I want to make a couple of notes here. Membership month is coming up. Membership month is the month of October. We have some great speakers. We have a neighborhood coffee. We have Rotary after hours. So I think that we have something for everyone. So please really dig down deep and find someone in your computer, someone in your file cabinet, wherever it might be, someone that you can invite to a meeting that you think would be a good Rotarian. And please bear in mind, no one loves Rotary any more than Michael Johnson. He spends countless hours. I mean, you know, we can laugh, but it's in all seriousness, he represents Rotary, 24/7. And, we need your help. He needs your help. He needs everyone to be on the membership committee. So please take note and do your best to bring someone during the month of October. Also, one other item is that if you know of a Rotarian that might have dropped out of Rotary during COVID, or perhaps someone that might have dropped out for other reasons that you think might like to come back, please think of that person during the month of October. We have a no-charge application fee for those former Rotarians that would like to rejoin the club. So please keep that in mind as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. And up on the screen, you can see the new branding of our meeting sponsor today. Thank you, Rotary Board Member Kelly Mahan's company, WeatherPod, formerly known as Under the Weather. is the original creator of the pop-up pod that helps keep outdoor enthusiasts dry and comfortable with whatever they are doing. You can see their tagline, "Live life weatherlessly." Let's give a big round of applause to Kelly. We got a couple of announcements. Bob Branstetter talking about the Condon School Party, and then Tom Noonan right after him talking about a fundraiser that you will not want to miss. Bob?
Thank you. I want to talk about the Condon School Party, and we're going to do it in December. My wife Mary and I are going to co-chair it this year. I wanted to give you a little perspective on the Condon School history. I just dug this up on their website. In 1919, the Junior League and the Rotary Club of Cincinnati began to organize classes for orthopedically handicapped children at the Cincinnati General Hospital. And a few years after that, that program became the Condon School. So Club 17 is literally the co-founder for the program that is today Condon School. I thought we just went there because somebody's taught there or something. The other thing I'll point out is 1919, the Great War had just ended, the Spanish flu was still going on, but that's 2 years older than Camp Allen. So our legacy with Condon School is longer than our legacy with Camp Allen. And to celebrate that legacy, every year, Club 17 throws a big party at Christmas. We get cookies and ice cream, and a clown and music. And Santa Claus, aka Bob McElroy, gives everybody a Christmas gift. And those Christmas gifts are picked out by the teachers in conjunction with the parents and the students. The timelines this year is it's going to be Tuesday, December the 5th. We'll begin decorations about 12:15. All the volunteers need to be there by about 12:45, and the party itself will run from 1 o'clock to about 2:15 or 2:30. If you are not able to volunteer that day, you can still participate by taking one of the gift cards. Gift tags will be available in mid-October from Christie, and last year we did 122. So if you want to take one, that's fine. If you want to take 5 or 6, that's fine. Wrapped and labeled gifts need to be returned by lunch on November the 16th. So this is, in addition to one of the largest events our club does, it's certainly the oldest. We need at least 40 volunteers on December the 5th. We had nearly 50 last year. We had half a dozen major categories. If you've done this before and you want to do the same thing again this year, that would be great. We will have sign-up sheets in October in the registration area outside the meeting. But I will add, I wear second hat in Club 17 in that I am the sponsorship chairman. And I send out weekly emails soliciting sponsorships. So if anybody wants to just respond to one of my emails and say, if I want to go to the Condon School Party, I'll go ahead and get you logged, I'll get you into the DAC-TV database, and then we get all the mailings that come out after that. Lastly, I want to acknowledge, and I don't remember we ever did this before, but I want to acknowledge the Red Light Table. The Red Light Table donated $2,500 for last year's Condon School Party. So they basically covered all the cost of all the decorations, not all the food, because we have under a generous donor who buys us the ice cream every year. But I want to give a special thanks to the Red Light Table for doing that. So we're looking forward to another wonderful Condon School Party this year, and thank you in advance.
Hi, I'm Tom Noonan, and I used to call myself a newspaper man too. But today I would have to call myself a newspaper person. Well, since we've been bombarding you lately with flyers, talks, slideshows, and emails, I think most everybody here knows that the World Affairs Committee is hosting a mini gala next Tuesday evening at Bands Studios to support our Solarize Uganda Now Sun project. So let me quickly recap. Sun in the past 5 years has been instrumental in providing solar electricity to 50 schools and medical centers in rural Uganda. Sun has inspected and approved 50 additional locations for solar installations. Sun also has purchased and warehoused enough solar panels and batteries for the additional 50 locations. Sun now needs to raise the funds to complete those installations. Sun has found an outside donor who will match us dollar for dollar up to $50,000 for this project. We want to raise that $50,000 and take advantage of the offer. The net, $50,000 plus $50,000 for $100,000 to complete the solarization of 100 schools and clinics, saving 80,000 metric tons of carbon from the atmosphere and affecting 250,000 people in rural Uganda. For every $1,000 you give, you'll get a chance to win a dinner party at the Montgomery Inn Boathouse worth $2,100, which was donated by Deborah Schultz. And as an additional bonus, all of us will meet Rotarian and UC grad Nathan Thomas, the young dynamo that's behind this entire project. So please join us 5:30 to 7:30 Tuesday evening at Band Studios, which is on McFarland Street right here in downtown Cincinnati.
Drinks and hearty appetizers. No charge for this event. And okay, if you can't come, you can either mail, email, send us a check. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob and Tom. And so that's Tuesday, next Tuesday. The next day is your deadline to sign up. You can sign up before, but next Wednesday is your deadline to sign up to be able to attend our meeting on October 26th, which is not going to be here. It's going to be at Stepping Stone's Norwood campus. This is your opportunity to participate in Due Days as a part of the Rotary Club project that we've designated. We are going to be participating in packing 12,000 meals with the UC Health, Food is Medicine, and Sam Hubbard Foundation. That meeting is sponsored by Flynn and Company. And again, we need your reservation to participate. Go to DACDB, go to the E-Raise, and click on the flyer and sign up to participate so that we know how many lunches, your box lunches, to be able to provide to you on that day. Again, no meeting here on October 26th, but you gotta make that reservation by next Wednesday. The week before's meeting, October 19th, is our annual Firemen's Recognition and Firewomen's Recognition. And we're gonna have some cookies. Maybe we just eat cookies that day and not do anything else. The cookies are being sold by Mary Branstetter in commemoration of World Polio Day. The cookies are coming from Boston Bakery, and for every cookie that is purchased, $2.67 is going to Rotary International's End Polio Now campaign. So we Cincinnati Rotarians, great opportunity for you to participate in Rotary International's signature fundraising campaign, End Polio Now. And every time we purchase a cookie, that $2.67 is being matched dollar for dollar by the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation. So again, buy as many cookies as you can. Again, let's just have a bunch of cookies on October 19th. And again, get those cookies from Mary Branstetter. Okay, let's celebrate 3 brand new members. Chris Adams, Michael Schatzman, Scott Hoper. Can you guys come on up? And let's introduce our new members in rapid fire succession. And we're gonna get one big group picture in order to catch up on our time. And Chris, you get to go first.
Thanks, President. Well, I have just a few things to cover. I don't have the time for that. Okay. Sorry.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. I'm here to introduce and welcome Patrick Ober into Club 17. Patrick and I met serving on a committee investigating ways to improve the work environments for DSPs. Those are direct support professionals, and those are the individuals that provide direct care to individuals at Stepping Stones. Patrick joined Stepping Stones in July of 22, and in January of 23 assumed the role of Director of Program and Operations. In this role, he is responsible for the day-to-day functions of Stepping Stone's 3 operating segments. Patrick has been a great addition to the Stepping Stones team. He is making a sizable impact on the individuals and the families we serve. He is utilizing his skill set to advance best practices at Stepping Stones. Patrick received his undergrad degree from IU in poli-sci, his JD from Belmont University, and his PhD in education from IU. He is published in many journals, incredible credentials, more degrees than a thermometer. He has experience in special ed, disability rights and advocacy, and therapeutic recreation. Some of Patrick's other family members were also leaders in the disability space. Patrick lives in northern Kentucky with his wife Allison and 1-year-old son Miles. Please give a warm word of welcome.
Welcome to the interactive portion of our program. What am I here to talk about?
Membership.
Louder? One more time, let me hear it. No, I'm here to talk about Steve Easley, but thanks for thinking about membership. Right? So I met Steve back in March. Well, actually, and here he comes now. I didn't meet Steve. I met his assistant at a chamber networking event. I invited his assistant to one of our coffee events over at Block Coffee, and we had a great time. I guess I got a good report because a couple of meetings later, Steve attended. Steve was so excited by the end of it, he comes over to me at the end of the meeting and says, "I'm ready to write a check. What do I write it for?" I totally forgot. Well, I said, "Well, let me find out. I get you a number." Totally forgetting that we have to go through, the committee formerly known as classification. And then we have to have the board of directors. So Steve, sorry about that. I was closing the sale and got ahead of myself. Well, it turns out that Steve also knows Ken Saunders, and we all know Ken, right? Everybody knows Ken. So between Steve and I, or between Ken and I, Steve never stood a chance. Sorry. So Steve is married with 3 children. They live in the Green Township area. Son is a freshman at St. Xavier High School, and 2 girls that he has go to Bridgetown Middle School. Steve is a graduate of Xavier University with a Bachelor of Science in 2000, MBA in International Marketing in 2013. Steve founded his company, Easily Blessed, in 2006. Now, what is Easily Blessed? They're a creative digital agency. They create content that energizes a brand and creates a lasting impression with their customers. So that's, in a nutshell, what they do. Okay, now, show of hands, we're back to the interactive portion. How many of you have heard of this thing called due days? Show of hands. Okay, good. Show of hands, how many of you have seen the videos that were produced for due days? Keep your hands up. Okay. So for those of you who've seen the video, you've seen Steve's work. Because you see, everyone, Steve produced those videos for Club 17 pro bono. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Steve Easley.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce another Steve to Rotary today, and that's Steve Custenborn. Steve's a colleague of mine at Wood & Lamping and a fellow estate planning attorney, where he assists clients in all sorts of planning matters, including probate administration, administering and putting private family succession plans. To try to keep us on time here. So certainly he enjoys, in addition to that, in his free time, spending time with his family. He's a graduate of The Ohio State University, so he also enjoys watching Ohio State play football. Sorry for any Notre Dame fans out there. If you could please give a big Rotary welcome to Steve Custenborn.
Final announcement is our split the pot. The winner receives $42. The winning ticket is 471414. 471414. There. And for a chance of pulling 471414. Awesome. You have a chance at $850 if you choose the Queen of Hearts. Oh, it's a heart. So close. All right. Al Conscious, will you please introduce our program?
Thank you, President Doug. Hearing Terry's sterling invocation, it reminded me of a fellow that I knew that his wife was not a particularly good cook. Actually, she was pretty bad. And so they used to pray after the meal. Today, we're very happy to introduce a longtime friend of mine, Pete Bronson. Many of you remember him from many years at the Enquirer. We also share a common interest. Pete has written extensively about the Beverly Hills fire in books and articles and so on. And Janice and I were in the Beverly Hills fire, so that's a separate story. So Pete is a newsman, editor, magazine writer, and owner of Chilidog Press. He's written 8 books, including Not in Our Town, Forbidden Fruit, and several others. He was editorial page editor and columnist for the Cincinnati Enquirer for nearly 20 years. Under his leadership, the Enquirer was judged Best Editorial Page in Ohio 4 years in a row. Before coming to Cincinnati in '92, he was editorial page editor and columnist at the Tucson Citizen in Tucson, Arizona. He started his career in Michigan after graduating from Michigan State University in his hometown of East Lansing. He has served on several not-for-profits, including Leadership Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky Children's Home, and Cincinnati Right to Life. He was a regular panelist producer on Channel 9 WCPO TV show Hot Seat, and also on the weekly Tucson news show Arizona Illustrated. He is an active group leader at Horizon Community Church, enjoys golf, travel, and working on his classic Camaro. He is father of 2 and lives with his wife Kathy in Milford, Ohio. Please welcome Pete Bronson.
It's good to be back with Rotary. I recognize the faces and fond memories of the days back at the Hall of Mirrors when I used to come over from the Enquirer, which was only a block away. And so I've always had a good time with the Rotarians. I've always thought that the world would be a better place, though, if we had a superhero named Conan the Rotarian. Somebody to enforce that 4-way test. So also I noticed on your program, your next speaker is going to be from the Cincinnati Zoo. Well, I'm here to talk about a different kind of wildlife. So let's take a tour through the wildlife history of Cincinnati and organized crime. So the organized crime actually was originated on the East Coast with Italian immigrants in the Cosa Nostra, the Black Hand Society, but it was pretty small, and it didn't get to be a national network until what? the government passed the Volstead Act in 1920, which enforced prohibition. And when the mob, which was then in kind of its infancy, figured out that they could supply what everybody wanted, that's when they grew into a national network with incredible reach all over the country. And one of the things, you may have heard of George Remus as the king of the bootleggers. Well, George Remus was not just king of the bootleggers in the Midwest or Cincinnati. He was the national king of the bootleggers. He moved more what they called red liquor or bootleg liquor than anybody in the country, including Capone. All of those guys that you read about or saw in the movies, they were getting their liquor from George Remus. And he had a fabulous place in West Price Hill. You may have read about it. It was one of the first homes in the nation that had an indoor pool. He made so much money moving his red liquor that he would have these lavish Christmas parties where the ladies would find a diamond ring on their plate with a diamond the size of an acorn, and the men would find the keys to a brand new Model T. He was a generous guy, but he was not generous paying his taxes. And he ended up going to prison for that. And there's a great book about that called Ghosts of Eden Park. It's a fabulous story. But most of his story is also in my first book. So when George went to prison, his gang took over, and one of these gangsters was this guy right here on the left, Pete Schmidt. Now, if that isn't typecasting of a gangster, I've never seen it. If you're looking to go as a gangster for Halloween, just borrow this slide. And here he is at the Newport Police Station. Pete Schmidt was the gang leader in Newport, and he figured out quickly that this network that George Remus had established was already there. The corruption, the fix was in. So here he is at the police station. He's probably giving them orders. He's not being arrested, you can guarantee that. The police were corrupt, the judges were corrupt, the district attorney, the prosecuting attorney, all the way up the ladder, everybody was corrupt. And they were on Pete Schmidt's payroll. He bought this old place in Southgate, and he named it the Beverly Hills Country Club in the 1930s. And he quickly turned it into the show place of the nation. All of the big acts in the nation came through the Beverly Hills Country Club. This is what it looked like inside in the 1930s. And you can see, this would look pretty good even today. You can expect a lounge like this in a place like this. So unfortunately, it was a little too nice. And the Cleveland Four Mob, the gang that had been given the Midwest as its franchise, came down and saw this and decided they had to have it. This was a really hot going nightclub, and this was a place for them to get a toehold in Kentucky and Cincinnati. Well, they made him an offer. He didn't know then that he couldn't refuse it because the Godfather hadn't been made yet. But he did refuse it. And so they gave him the offer. They said, we will buy you out or we'll burn you out. Well, sure enough, in 1936, right around Christmas time, they burned the club. It was about 4 guys who went in and did the job. And unfortunately, the caretaker's wife had her sister staying with her who was 5 years old, and the little girl died. She was the first casualty on that hilltop in Southgate that we know of. More on that in a while. Here's the guy that ran the Cleveland Four. He was a very smart guy. They also called the Cleveland Four the Silent Syndicate because they were wise. They didn't make a lot of headlines like Capone with shooting people up on Valentine's Day. But when Capone hired people to kill those guys in the Valentine's Day massacre, he didn't trust his own guys to be ruthless enough. So he hired guys like Mo Dallas, who was from the Purple Gang in Detroit. And the Purple Gang was known as the most ruthless, bloodthirsty gang anywhere. So that's who Al Capone contracted for his biggest hits. Mo Dallas came up through the Purple Gang. He had the franchise with the Cleveland Four to run all of Ohio, Kentucky, and Michigan. And he was making a bundle, let me tell you. They had all kinds of turf wars. On the left there, you had Estes Kefauver. Maybe some of you have heard in your history books or classes, or maybe you even remember or hearing from your parents about the Kefauver Commission. This was a revolutionary thing in the infancy of television, and it grabbed the whole nation by the collar, and nobody could stop watching these hearings. What they did is they went from city to city, 30 different cities in the country, and they would have these hearings where they would bring in the mobsters and put them under oath and cross-examine them to expose and reveal the extent of this network. And this Time magazine gives you an idea that it was like an octopus. You see here gambling, police corruption, drugs, prostitution, guns, everything that you can think of, the mob was providing. So what happened is they had gotten their toe under the door with the bootleg liquor. But what people didn't know is when they invited bootleg liquor into their towns, they brought in a lot of party crashers. Because the mob doesn't just bring you one thing. It brings you a whole menu of vices. So this is the hitman who worked for Mo Dallas and enforced things in Newport. His name was Red Masterson. He confessed to a reporter from Louisville that he killed more than 100 people. He would do so with a pair of 38s that he carried at most times, and sometimes when they wanted to make it a special point, they would do what they called the Newport nightgown, which is they would wrap somebody in chains and throw them off the suspension bridge. Red Masterson had a place right there called the Merchants Club, which, by the way, was almost next door to the Newport Police Station. They got along very well. At this time also, there was a guy named Gil Beckley. It's very interesting because Gil Beckley was the mentor to a guy named Lefty Rosenthal. Does that ring a bell to anybody?
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie Casino? The Robert De Niro character in Casino is Lefty Rosenthal. Lefty learned everything about casinos from Gil Beckley. Gil Beckley was such a smart odds maker, and he was headquartered in Newport, that the NFL hired him to tell them when games were being rigged, because he could watch the game and tell if players were how it was supposed to come out. He eventually got whacked by the mob. During this period, the FBI and the Attorney General Bobby Kennedy asked the IRS to take a look at Newport, and what they found was that the handle of betting going through Newport in those years leading up to 1960 was bigger than the combined tax revenues of Kentucky and Ohio. That's how much they were making. So Bobby Kennedy sent the IRS in, and that became the end of that era because people like Mo Dallas and the Cleveland mob, and also New York and Chicago mobsters who had some of the action in Newport, they all headed for the new mecca of organized crime, Las Vegas, where anything goes. And after a while, in his retirement, Mo Dallas said, everything I needed to know about running casinos in Las Vegas, I learned at the Beverly Hills Country Club. Wow. And here's the new boss. This is Screw Andrews, as he was known in Newport. Funny story about him is when Bobby Kennedy put him at the top of his most wanted list of mobsters, he said, finally, we got somebody who's not an Italian. And his staff came to him and said, sorry, sir, but we have to inform you his name is Frank Andriola. So Screw Andrews was a very bad guy. He killed a lot of people. He ran brothels. He ran the numbers racket. He had killed the man who did run the numbers racket in the west end of Cincinnati to take it over. And it was very violent, a nasty, nasty guy. He met a nasty end also. He apparently had some onset of dementia in his older years, and the mob began to be a little worried that Screw couldn't keep secrets. So he was in St. Elizabeth's Hospital, and the story from the staff is that two guys in suits, big guys in suits, showed up and told everybody on the floor to take a break. Well, they did. The next thing you know, Screw Andrews went flying out the window. This is what happened. Now, there's another whole chapter. I can go on forever, but we don't have time. But just let me tell you, the George Ratterman story would make one of the greatest movies. George Ratterman, how many remember George Ratterman and the story of April Flowers? Okay, I won't go into it. But here's George Ratterman. He was framed by the mob. He managed to bring it to the attention of the Attorney General, who came to town and cleaned up Newport. That was Bobby Kennedy. It was also the first shots fired in the war of the Kennedys on organized crime. And that led to another whole section that I didn't expect in my book of looking into tapes of secret wiretaps that Bobby Kennedy did on the mob, in which these mobsters are talking about killing the Kennedys. So fascinating stuff that I obtained from the FBI through the Freedom of Information Act. So this is George Ratterman. When he became sheriff, he had to hire his own untouchable deputies because all of the deputies in the county were on the tape for the mob. In fact, the county supervisor said that they wouldn't approve any pay increase for him because they were already being paid. So here's George Ratterman. He goes to serve a warrant on Screw Andrews, and he comes out and finds the Newport police have ticketed his car. These things really happen. This is Screw Andrews' headquarters in the 1960s. It was the Sportsman's Club. And thanks to Bobby Kennedy going after the mob and this huge handle that the IRS couldn't wait to get their hands on, they raided this with more than 35 FBI and IRS agents one night. They found stacks of cash, huge stacks of numbers. They found rooms that could only be opened by touching two nails together. It was the craziest thing. And Screw Andrews, I shudder to think that balls could talk what was going on in that place. But that was the end of Screw Andrews. And what followed was a period of, I call it disorganized crime, when the porn merchants moved in. Now, in the 1970s, the FBI did a lengthy, exhaustive report covering all major cities in the U.S. and came to the conclusion that 95% of all adult businesses, that's X-rated movies, massage parlors, adult bookstores, you name it, topless bars, 95% was controlled by organized crime. It was controlled by two big families on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. So what we thought of at the time, if you lived through the 70s, well, you had to live through the 70s to believe what went on in the 70s. But what was going on, everybody talked about it like it was a First Amendment battle and this and that. It was all organized crime. What had happened is they had started out with bootleg liquor and the government legalized that. Then they moved on to gambling and the government started running lotteries. So they're losing their franchise, so they go into porn. And they discovered porn movies were huge money makers. They ended up moving in on some major studios in Hollywood and controlled that. And they ran all of this stuff in Newport. In Newport at this time, there were 17 topless clubs on Monmouth Street alone. And the city fought continuing battles with them to try and get them to clean up, which much to Newport's credit was a really uphill battle because they had to fight a Supreme Court that at the time was very liberal on these issues, and they said things like, well, I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it, which was a big It made you wonder what the Supreme Court justices were doing all day. So one time the city of Newport passed an ordinance that said all of these dancers had to cover strategic parts of their body. And they came out the next night to see if they were following the new ordinance, and they found out the dancers had all applied transparent Band-Aids. So we move in now. After I wrote the first book, a lot of people were asking me, so what was going on in Cincinnati at all this time? And I thought, well, you know, Cincinnati had its own adult playground. It was called Newport. And we even had a place that had the perfect name for that. It was called the Playtorium. That is now the Syndicate, by the way. And it was nothing but a casino, and a lot of these places were one-stop shopping, so that you had a brothel upstairs, you had casino gambling and bootleg liquor on the first floor, and downstairs you had the off-track betting. So, now we move over to Cincinnati. Let's find out what was going on in Cincinnati in all these years. Well, it all started here's our hero, Larry Flynn, with Mom Raleigh outside the Brass Ass, which, by the way, is still there. And Larry was a regular there. Now, Larry's story, if you look it up, you're going to see what the media had always repeated, which he made up. It's just fantasy. He said that he got out of the Navy and he was a great entrepreneur, and he got this idea and started a little bar in Dayton, and pretty soon he built that up into the whole hustler empire. Nonsense. He bankrupted 11 bars in Dayton, and finally he showed up in Cincinnati with a big bankroll to open the Hustler Club because he just borrowed $1 million from the Cleveland mob. So he was mobbed up all the time, always. And so was best Mom Raleigh. During this period, there were unbelievable gunfights. and burnouts and arsons as these mob figures took over each other's topless clubs and territory. It was totally crazy. Here we have a newspaper in Cleveland that had linked him to the underworld and showed that he was taking this money from organized crime. In fact, when Larry got shot, the first assumption by the FBI was that it was the mafia, because he owed almost all of that $1 million and he wasn't making his payments. So meanwhile, in Cincinnati, in the 40s and 50s, there's this guy. His name is Bob Machine Gun Melvin. He is a detective. And this is how detectives used to walk the streets, armed with Thompson submachine guns. On the left, you see Bob. He looks like he could be somebody's next door dad in a sitcom. On the right, you see him with his Thompson. He's cleaning out the basement of a downtown business where two guys who had been suspected of armed robbery were holed up. And he said, "I'll get them out." Bob loved his machine gun. There are some amazing stories about Bob Machine Gun Melvin. Here you see police detectives in the 1950s and 60s. They look like mobsters, right? You'd say that's a scene from The Godfather. No, those are police detectives. On the right side, we see, on the far right, that is Tom Stryker Sr. Everybody knows the police chief, right? Tom Stryker, Tommy. Okay, that's his dad. And there's another amazing story I found in Cincinnati. Besides the fact that Tom Stryker, now that he's retired, opened up and told me an amazing story about the police corruption that he encountered when he first became a police captain and joined the force. Tom Sr., his story was that during a period in 1975, there was a series of 24 adult nightclubs and bookstores and massage parlors, any of these adult businesses all over town that were vandalized. The windows were shot out, or they'd have bricks through the windows, and it was unsolved until one night. Some police cruising in downtown Cincinnati heard gunshots, and they saw a car coming the other way with 4 men in it. Well, those 4 men were driving a car that was one of the unmarked police detective cars. And it turns out that the people that were doing this string of vandalism was Tom Stryker Sr. And he was accompanied by one of the triggermen was a Catholic priest. It's true. I'm not making it up. So what happened is these guys got back from World War II, like Tom Sr., and they said, "I'm not letting these people take over my city." They had tried to sue them, tried to get the court to go after them, but they were very good. These adult businesses would come to town with platoons of New York lawyers to fight for the First Amendment. And most cities would just throw up their hands in despair. Well, they said, "Not us." They said, "Not in our town." In fact, Tom Sr. told his son, he said, "Look, these people hurt children, and I'm not having that in my neighborhood because I have daughters." He said, "Someday you'll understand." So here are a couple of people. How many people recognize the man on the left? How soon they forget? Charlie Keating. You may remember Charlie Keating as the face of the SNL meltdown in the 90s. Before that, though, Charlie Keating was a warrior for decency in Cincinnati. He went toe-to-toe with the mob to the point where the mob's lawyers had a national convention and put him at the top of their public enemies list. He formed an organization called Citizens for Decency Through Law, and when he realized that these mob guys would bring all their lawyers to town and fight you, he built a team of lawyers with his own money, and he raised tons of money through the Catholic Church. And this team of lawyers would travel from city to city and fight these battles. So if Cleveland or Dayton or anybody in Kentucky, Lexington, anybody wanted to fight that battle to close down the adult bookstores, he'd send his team in there, and they had a victory rate of 95%. This was the SWAT team for decency. On the right, you have another warrior for decency. Everybody knows who he is, right? Siles. And that's his chief assistant, Fred Cardellano. There's just an amazing story in this book about the police corruption that Siles uncovered in 1975 that was shot and mostly forgotten. It's probably the worst case of police corruption disruption in the history of Cincinnati. What it boils down to is that the chief of police was being entertained at downtown hotels at stag parties by hookers. And the hookers were supplied by Larry Flint. And Larry Flint was supplying with the direct understanding that the police and the enforcement would look the other way for everything that was going on in this hustle club. Thank you. We're getting close to time up here, and I want to leave some time for questions, so I'm going to zip through this. Larry Flint was charged with obscenity and organized crime, and he was convicted, but then it was overturned. Silas has some very interesting comments about political string pulling that was going on, because to this day, if you look at it closely, and I've talked to some police, there's a strong suspicion that it was not only the police chief who was at those parties. There may have been judges, there may have been people elsewhere among the VIPs of Cincinnati who wanted that case to end. And the second biggest story, the first biggest story in Cincinnati that year was, of course, the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire. 165 people killed. The second biggest story was Larry Flint being prosecuted by Silas. Both made national headlines and put Cincinnati on the map. Here we have a picture of the Supper Club immediately after the fire. You can see that the clamshell has torn out the zebra room, which was the site of the start of the fire. I interviewed a fire marshal who asked to make that a crime scene and rope it off, and he was told by the governor to back off and shut the blank up. I've got my people in charge of this investigation. And the governor immediately came out and said that it was an accident. Here we see a picture of the area below the zebra room where the state police who conducted the investigation said for more than 20 years that there was no evidence of a fire. And we have a chapter in there about our late great Jerry Springer. I'm sure you won't be surprised to learn that his mistake of visiting a health club once or twice was actually a multiple series of visits to not a health club, but a brothel that was run by the mob. He was a regular. He had a deal with the prosecutor and the chairman of the Democratic Party that if he would resign from city council and leave town, they would not prosecute him. He agreed. How did that turn out? He became mayor. Here's the serial killer that was that shot Larry Flint. An amazing story there. I'm going to keep going fast here. Larry Flint liked nothing better than to revel in the press and media attention that he got as a champion of the First Amendment. Here he is in his gold-plated wheelchair. There's an amazing story about this guy on the right who was the original soldier of fortune, mercenary, CIA, dark ops guy. He did assassinations, he overthrew governments, he did whatever the CIA wanted. Larry Flint hired him and paid him $1 million to pack that wheelchair with plastic explosives. Larry was going to go into the Supreme Court wearing a vest full of needles and nails and detonate the wheelchair and blow up the entire U.S. Supreme Court. Mitch Worvell, the assassin, drew the line there. He had one scruple, which is I'm not going to blow up the Supreme Court. This is all in FBI records that I was able to obtain. It's just an amazing story. And here, one more thing, and then I'll take some questions. This is Life magazine in 1957 when the Cincinnati Police Division was held up as a national model of the most professional, cleanest, best police department anywhere in the country. In fact, the cover even says every city should model themselves after Cincinnati police. Larry Flint came to town, and within 2 years we had the biggest scandal, a sex scandal, and bribery, corruption, extortion, vice unit completely out of control. This is what organized crime does. And finally, after this, I will be out here in the lobby signing books. If you're interested in getting the next one or both of them together, I have a special price for both. I am not going to be one of those people who brings up Christmas sales before Halloween. Oh, wait a minute, I just did. So I'll be glad to take some questions about organized crime, and I've heard so many good stories. these days, organized crime has mainly moved to the coasts again, back to the unions and East Coast, West Coast, and into politics to some extent, but not really much in Cincinnati. What you have now, when I talk to the U.S. Attorney's Office, is more the new gangs of MS-13, people coming across the border. You have Chinese gangs, you have that, but the old Cosa Nostra Italian mob, pretty much gone. Yes.
In the photograph where one person is doing this and the other person is holding his camera, what were they doing? And
that was when that was that same incident where Sheriff Ratterman showed up to serve a warrant, and Screw came out on the sidewalk, and he couldn't slug the sheriff, so he picked on the Cincinnati Post photographer, and he did beat him down to the sidewalk. Yeah. That's the kind of guy Screw Andrews was. He was. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, there was a rumor back in the 70s that Larry Flint put a hit out on Charlie Keating's daughter, and I don't know her name, I think she was married to Gary Hall, the Olympic swimmer. Was that true?
And in fact, I verified that, and it's in the book.
Oh.
Yeah.
He not only did he offer a bounty to anybody who would kidnap and rape Charlie Keating's daughter, it happened. And it's a very sad story, but shortly after that, Charlie moved out to Phoenix. For other reasons, but that was certainly one for the family. But that's the kind of guy Larry Flint was.
Hey, Doug.
Yes.
I just wanted to know what Al was doing at the club the night before.
Cincinnati skyline, as well as our four-way test on the back. Thank you for coming back. We'll also be making a donation to the End Polio Now campaign in your name. Thank you, and we'll hopefully see you again at some point in time in the future. Thank you. So we have two committee meetings, World Affairs meeting in the President's Room, and the four-way speech contest meeting in the Tea Room. Don't forget, I'll see you Tuesday at the Bain Studio. Meeting adjourned.